Hello. Hello, everyone. Just checking the microphone is coming through before we start. I hope everyone is well. This is the first time we're tuning in as Assembly Online for 2021. Yep, my mic's all fine. Great, really nice to see people saying hello in the chat. Hello to Tessa, my mum. Shafi, Akieva, hello everyone. Caroline Evans, hello everyone. Anne Follows, hello from Anne in Suffolk. Stacey Williams and Katie, who will be chatting later, live from Brighton. Stacey's from Hove. Come back to the chat in a bit, but I thought I'd say hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in tonight. As a lot of you know, Assembly Online is a regular free program of visual arts, sound, poetry and performance that comes onto YouTube every 2 weeks and is free for anyone to join from a device. I'll post links in the chat at the end of the episode program with links to the mailing list and upcoming events. But for now, let's go on with tonight's event, which is Caroline Fisher Projects, a clay conversation with ceramicist Katie Spragg. I'm going to read Caroline's bio out before they start, as Caroline won't do it herself, and she's done a lot, and it'd be good to give her some sort of introduction and context before she starts. Caroline Fisher is subject leader for the MA in Curation at Norwich University of the Arts, and founded Caroline Fisher Projects in 2018. Caroline originally trained as a doctor before studying fine art at Central St Martin's College of Art and taking an MA in Museum Studies at the University of East Anglia. She has worked for Wellcome Trust, the British Museum, and was curator of East Gallery at Norwich University Arts until 2018. Alongside employment, she has a practice as a freelance curator, running the residency project Borwick Arts between 2002 and 2007, and curating 2 exhibition projects for the National Trust at Felbrook Hall, The Makers and the Tourists. More recently, she created Woven Waters, part of the Broad Authorities programme, Watermills and Marshes. Caroline continues to create opportunities for artists, both online and in the real world, with the aim of bringing to light new ways of working with ceramics and engaging communities. I'm gonna pass over to Caroline in a second. Just looking at the chat, Kerry Lemon, also here from Brighton, and Kay Warbrick. Kay Warbrick says they can't join. If you're posting in the chat, hopefully it should be working for you, but if you are having any difficulties, just refresh the page and try clicking play on the video. Do post in the chat if you have any issues, and I will try and respond to that whilst the event is going on. Hello, Nikki. Nice to see you tuned in as well. I'm going to pass over to Caroline now, who will be talking and presenting some slides, and she'll be joined by Katie Spragg in a while. At the end of the event, there'll be a discussion that will be open to any questions. So if you are listening and you do have any thoughts that you'd like to enter into the discussion at the end, then do post them into the chat. Oh, great. Here is Caroline now.
Hi, hello. Hopefully that's working.
Yeah.
Great. And can you see my screen as well?
Yeah, sorry, I've got
presentation. Okay, this is really strange. I'm presenting something to people and I have no idea who's watching, apart from the ones that Henry said hello to. So please do give us a little hello in the chat, which I can't see, but Henry will tell us later who's watching, and hopefully you're all going to ask lots of questions later on. So welcome. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you, Assembly Online, for inviting me, and thank you, Katie, for joining me. Thank you, Norfolk Contemporary Art Society, for also collaborating on this event. And it's a really nice way to start the year, I think, because it's a bit miserable for everybody at the moment. And I just hope I can, say some positive things about what I've been doing and about ceramics and about the kind of prospects for curators and for artists in the future, particularly working with ceramics. So as Henry said, I started Caroline Fisher Projects in 2018. And this image on the first slide is from my very first private view. Private views, what on earth are they? I hear you say. Anyway, so that's Katie talking about her work there with one of the guests. I'm just trying to figure out how to get to the next slide. Here we go. So here is Upper St Giles Street, where the gallery is situated. It's on the first floor above Bread Sauce, if you know Norwich, and there's the Catholic Cathedral in the background. So it's a really lovely street. I found the space in 2018, and it's got a kind of domestic feel to it, but it also is quite nice and spacious. I had some plinths made, and just got on with it really. And my first exhibition was this one called Nature in and Out of Place. Bit of a strange title, but I was thinking about the way that clay is a natural material, and it's used in various degrees of sort of naturalness, I suppose. There are some people using clay who dig it straight out of the ground, and others who use it in a much more processed state. And then clay can be used in so many different ways. And one of the reasons I set up my gallery was because I make myself using porcelain, but also I'm really interested in functional work in ceramics, but also more sculptural, fine art ways of working, and how those different ways of working with ceramics can kind of sit alongside one another, I suppose. And I wanted to try and do that right from day one in my first exhibition, showing functional and sculptural work. So I approached Katie Spragg actually before I even thought about that exhibition, and I went and visited her studio, which at the time was in London, and absolutely loved her work. So she was kind of the cornerstone of that first show. A lot of the other work was functional work. So there were some pieces by Akiko Hirai, David Wright, Ansia Nestus, which were all functional pieces. But also, just looking at this next slide, the piece that you can see on the right, the tower, was a piece made by Scott Stewart, who had just recently completed his master's in fine art at Norwich University of the Arts, and that was his degree show piece, in fact. So he was really interesting in that he was making sculptural objects in clay, using all sorts of different types of clay, some that he had dug himself and some that were more processed types of clay. And all of those clays related to places he came from or that were part of his own history. So that is an image of a piece by David Wright, who he again was using local clay to him. He works in Leicestershire and is very much a studio potter. But he makes also these beautiful lids for the boxes that he creates from local clay. And the lids are actually made from found pieces of timber, or sometimes pieces of timber that his friends give to him. So that was nice to have that contrast between studio pottery and more sculptural ways of working and more conceptual ways of working. So Scott was really kind of thinking about the industrial heritage of the area that he came from in Derbyshire. And I think that also had a relationship with the work of David Wright in this slide. These are some pieces by Akiko Hirai. And these are the sculptures that Katie showed in the exhibition. So very much part of her signature style of using porcelain to recreate plants. And these ones related in a way to Victorian plant collecting practice and the use of cases like these, Wardian cases, to bring plants back from foreign countries and to enable them to make the voyage across oceans intact without shriveling up and dying. So yes, these displays were a very particular thing. They actually, the plants themselves related to corners of Kew Gardens, I believe. So maybe we can ask Katie a bit more about those later on. So moving on to the next show, I'm just going to do a little whistle-stop tour now through the different exhibitions that I showed. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was to show work by young and emerging ceramicists, both making sculptural and functional work. And I thought it might be quite fun to have two ceramicists, one functional, one sculptural, and to show their work together. So this was an exhibition of Alice Walton and Emma Johnson's work. Emma makes these functional pieces out of coloured porcelain using the kind of yellows, pinks, greys, all colours that very much go together in a kind of mid-century feel. And Emma Johnson was an artist that I actually came to know through Katie, who works in London. Actually, she's moved to the West Country now. Maybe she's watching. It would be lovely to say hello. She is. So they went really well together, partly because they both were using coloured porcelain to make their work. And so there was a nice relationship there. And there's another image. It was springtime 2019. So it was a really nice kind of fresh, colourful exhibition for that time of year. And then the next show I did was, I called it A Life in Blue and White, and it was porcelain made by Graham Clark, who was very important to me personally, because I'm good friends with his daughter, Kerostine, who may well be watching as well. And through Kerostine, it was possible to put on a show of her father's work. He had sadly died a couple of years before. He was only in his late 60s, early 70s. So it was really lovely to put on this kind of tribute show of his work. He had worked with Edoardo Paolozzi when he was at the Royal College of Art. This image on the right-hand side is a bowl that Graham made and Edoardo Paolozzi decorated. So it was really amazing to have 3 of those pieces in the show, and lots of other porcelain works that Graham made through his life, as well as some of his 2D work. So as a result of that exhibition, I started doing these events that I called clay conversations. And actually I had a clay conversation with Kerostine Graham Clark during that exhibition in summer 2019. And at the same time, I started making trips to Venice. I made a few trips to Venice that summer to go to the Biennale and to develop a clay conversation in Venice, which was a fantastic opportunity. It wasn't quite part of the Venice Biennale, although I'd like to think that it was, but I advertised it. It was on Eventbrite, and I had a full house of people that signed up for the limited places that there were. And it was basically a walk from the Ateneo Veneto, which was showing Edmund de Waal's Psalm at the time, which had been commissioned as part of the Biennale. And we walked from there to the studios of 2 ceramicists, one of whom you see here. That was us in the Ateneo. And that really got me hooked on the idea of engaging people with ceramics and having these conversations, just like this one that we're having today. Of course, the early ones were all in the real world, and little did we all know at that point that COVID was going to hit and everything was going to go online. But it was, in hindsight, it was really good preparation, and it was something that was possible to take online. So the next exhibition, actually, this was an amazing opportunity for a clay conversation, was with Tina Vlasopoulos. So this show opened in November 2019, and this is me having hysterics at something that Tina had said. We had the most amazing clay conversation in November 2019, and I'd love to do another clay conversation with her, because it was such fun, and showing her work was just a pure joy. The works that I showed were mainly these conversations with friends, which were all portraits of her friends, semi-abstracted in stone, unglazed stoneware, but burnished. So really beautiful surfaces, very interesting, suggestive shapes, and they all had a story behind them, which were completely fascinating. There's another image of that show, and this is a wall piece. So then moving on to March 2020, and we all know what happened then. So I had a show planned with, again, a sculptural and a functional ceramicist, putting the two side by side. Lydia Hardwick, who makes these pots, as in the black and white one here, and Holly Stevenson, who makes more functional type, more, sculptural work in stoneware. But of course, I went to collect the work, and then lockdown happened. So all the boxes here ready to be unpacked. And I did put the show together. I installed it, but the gallery lay empty for quite a while. But what did happen was it gave me the opportunity to start really engaging with people online. So what I did was I started doing clay conversations on Instagram Live. So I had a fantastic one with Lydia Hardwick. Actually, I kind of prepared for this by, even when I was installing that exhibition, I did some little posts on Instagram, just trying it out, really, just to see, you know, how is this new way of working going to operate for me. I was kind of nervous about it, but it worked really well. And actually, Instagram Live is amazing. So I've had quite a lot of fun talking to artists via that medium, and sometimes I record them, sometimes I don't. Some are more official, if you like, than others. But this one with Lydia Hardwick was excellent. I think it's still on my YouTube, actually. So then I managed to open up the exhibition, firstly by appointment, and then later on in the summer, we had a clay conversation, a sort of meet the artists event, which Lydia couldn't make it to, actually, but Holly Stevenson came up to Norwich for that and talked about her amazing kind of suggestive work, which talks about women, about form, about voyeurism, about sort of Freudian psychoanalysis. It's kind of fun, but also thoughtful and provocative at the same time. And this work actually was selected for an art exhibition called the Procreate Art Prize exhibition, which was in London at Cromwell Place later on in the summer, and that was a direct result of showing the work here, which was really, really good. So then my Christmas exhibition, just still on actually, but it was open before Christmas, from November onwards, was Winter Glow, and that was two ceramic potters, two porcelain potters, and a stoneware ceramicist, Bjork Haraldsdottir, and Emily S. Jeffries, who's more sculptural but had made some functional pieces. You can still see this online on my website and online shops, so do have a look at that. But now I've kind of overrun my time of doing this, so I'm going to, those are by Catherine Sheriff. I'm going to go to Katie now. And hopefully she hasn't completely fallen asleep. Henry, I don't know if you can bring Katie in. But I was just going to quickly, hi, she's there. I was just going to quickly introduce Katie. So Katie, as I mentioned, I got to know Katie through the very first show that I did in my space. Katie graduated from the MA in Ceramics and Glass from the Royal College of Art in 2016. And I saw a show that she did at the Garden Museum in London and contacted her. And yeah, since then I went and visited her studio and we started working together. But her work's been acquired by the V&A. She's shown in lots of exhibitions in the UK and abroad. And currently she's in an exhibition called Gatherings, I think, at Hauser and Worth Make in Somerset. So Katie, maybe before I prattle on for too much longer, you can talk a little bit about yourself. And I wondered, first of all, how did you come to work with clay, and what was it that drew you to working with clay?
Thanks, Caroline. No, I really enjoyed hearing a little bit of history of your gallery, and I'd forgotten I was in the first show, so that's really nice to be reminded that it was the first one. So I kind of lived in the art room when I was at school, at secondary school, and I had an amazing, very supportive art teacher, Jackie Clark. So I feel like I should mention her because she was kind of why I'm here today. But it wasn't until I did my foundation at Camberwell College of Arts that I sort of started working with clay. And really that was when I realised I was interested in making. I was still quite indecisive about what materials I might want to make in. So I went on to do my degree at Brighton, which at the time was called Wood, Metals, Ceramics and Plastics. And we did exactly that. We did a little bit in each of those materials. And that was when I discovered that I liked working with materials where you could manipulate them instantly. So I realised that wood and metal were far too rigid and involved kind of too much precision, but ceramics and plastics, which I specialised in, kind of offered that sort of instant response. And then most recently, as I think you mentioned, I studied at the Royal College of Art. So I graduated from there in 2016.
And what drew you to making sculptural pieces rather than being a studio potter or making
I mean, I think probably part of it is also down to that thing of precision, that if I did make functional wear, it would always be a little bit wonky, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's also that I've always been really interested in storytelling. And I guess that's another thing that kind of drew me to working with clay. And the sculptures allow me to do that. I have done more functional pieces in the past, but they've always been a kind of vessel to then put an image or an illustration on to tell a story. So I guess that was why the kind of sculptural side interested me.
And why did plants come to be important to you, do you think? I mean, what story does it tell? There are so many ways that you could go with plants, aren't there?
Yeah, I think actually it started not directly from the plants themselves, but it was more about place. And I was really interested in how you could tell, I guess, the story of a place, but it was also about our interaction as humans with nature. And I've told this story before, but it started with a camping trip that I went on with my sister, Rosie, in my at the end of my first year of my MA. So we were kind of sent away to go and do research on things that interested us. And we went on this kind of 2-day camping trip to the Brecon Beacons. And I wasn't really sure what I was looking for, but I realised I was really interested in the traces that we leave in the landscape. So whether that's a desire line of footprints walking across a hill or kind of cairns. And then I came back to the studio and one of the tutors suggested that I just make this patch of grass to show the kind of trace of something that might have been there. And then that was it. I was stuck making grass for the next few years.
Yeah. But it's funny you said about precision and how if you made functional objects, they'd be all wonky, because actually your pieces are so precise. I mean, there's such detail in there, isn't there? That it shows a very ordered mind, I think, to be able to make patches of grass for years,
Yeah, I guess the other thing that sort of I've become interested in terms of making plants now is there's a lot of research coming out about the way that plants interact with each other and across different species, and I've become quite interested in how we can learn from plants and maybe cooperate better together as well.
That's interesting. So do some of your current pieces in that Hauser and Wirth exhibition, do they reflect that interest in plant interactions then? Because I noticed that some of them have titles that are several different plants.
Yeah, so I was really interested in that, going and visiting the garden. So that body of work's inspired by the Pierre Oudolphe garden at the Hauser and Wirth Gallery in Somerset. And I guess a lot of the time I'm invited to these kind of quite curated spaces of nature. And I mean, Pierre Oudolphe's planting is all very much about it being naturalistic, but it's still a vision of nature. It's not real nature. So what I was looking at,
precisely engineered almost, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was kind of interested in where these more like wild plants had crept in, or where they could be found growing in the local landscape. And so this motif of bindweed sort of crept quite literally through a lot of those works, because of the way it will just grow anywhere, and you can find it in a parking lot in London, or you can find it in this very beautifully curated garden.
And actually that also reminds me of one of your lovely animations. So there's an animation which I think Henry might be able to put in the chat section on YouTube, which is paving stones. It's like the cracks in the pavement where these clay grass weeds are coming up through the paving stone cracks, and then they go again at the end. It's a really lovely animation, but I don't know if you still do those at all, but was that around, did you make that around the time that you came back from your camping trip? And
yeah, that was made in my second year of my MA, when I was able to take advantage of the amazing animation and filming facilities at college. But that piece I actually made because at the time I was making this work, that I kind of had this sense it was my childhood experience of nature. And I was making the like kind of beautiful meadow pieces, and then I really thought about it, and actually what I remembered was sitting at the bottom of my parents' garden and pulling weeds out from behind the bin, and that that was as kind of exciting and charming as wading through this imaginary meadow.
Yes.
So I wanted, and that kind of sparked my interest in this overlooked nature, and these kind of amazing compositions that you find growing from cracks in the pavement.
And actually that's most people's experience of nature, isn't it? Is that it's not the beautifully presented garden or the rolling meadows or sort of grasslands. It's actually just, it's their back garden. It's the overlooked bit of wasteland down the road or whatever, or the playground. And so I think it's really lovely to draw attention to that. I particularly like the way that the weeds kind of just disappear at the end with that animation. It's really lovely. But maybe what we should also move on to is talking about your work with communities, because that's become a really important part of your practice, and actually that's something that we're hoping to work on together through a project. But can you say a bit about how that came about, your work with communities?
So I guess that's quite a nice link in that one of the community groups I've worked with recently, although actually it was quite a while ago now, was a group of Lambeth young carers as part of my Lambeth Wilds project at the Garden Museum. And for part of that, we were kind of going out and exploring and investigating and looking for these instances of nature in the local area. But the work with communities came about, I guess, quite naturally, because I've always taught lots of different people and run different workshops. And in the past few years, I've become really interested in how that can mesh much more closely with my own making work, and how working with other people can then inform and feed into the pieces I make. I'm not sure what slide we're on now, but I think we flick to one of the ones of Clay for Dementia. So that's a group of people who have dementia, and then their companions. So that might be their partner, their child, or a paid for carer. And I've been running that programme since October 2017. So that's over 3 years ago, and some of our participants, 1 or 2 of them, have been coming for that 3.5 years.
That's
and so
amazing, isn't it?
so amazing.
And their skills and their engagement with clay must have, come on in leaps and bounds in that time. That must have been amazing to watch them, because I guess with dementia, people's actual kind of functional skills, doing things with their hands, that is something that must be so valuable, but also something that they can do that doesn't use a completely different part of the brain to that's affected by dementia, I guess, doesn't it? So
yeah, I think one of the things that I often talk about with this project is often there's this kind of idea that people with dementia, like, everything is going downhill, but with the clay, I've seen their skills improve. And we recently got some feedback from them, and a few of them were saying that it's kind of given them this new skill and something that they can do that they weren't doing before. And it actually, what it does as well is an excuse for us to all meet together and before have a cup of tea and a biscuit. And now we've been doing the sessions online since April.
I think that's great that you've been able to continue it and have the same number of people being involved in it.
So a few people weren't able to get online, but the majority of the participants were, and we've just had 3 new couples, so 6 new people join us, which we didn't know how that would work because I've never met them in person, so I've not been able to show them the clay skills face to face, but actually it's worked really well, and they've all kind of picked up the skills quite quickly, and then it's kind of given some new energy to the group, and they're asking different questions. But I guess the thing that feels loveliest about it is we have an hour most Thursday mornings, and it's just this kind of time and space held for us to make together and have a chat.
Yeah, that's really lovely. And I was also just thinking about the project that we're planning to do ourselves, and how that will work in terms of doing a clay workshop on Zoom. I assume you use Zoom, do you, for the Clay for Dementia? And that on the PowerPoint now, it's the left-hand top image. But yeah, how do you actually sort of show people the skills if you're doing this online?
I do a lot of kind of tilting my laptop forward. I've got a little stand that I put it on, but I always start with a pinch pot, who anyone who's done anything with clay recently will know is kind of the fundamental thing. But it's lovely because it's so tactile, and you can kind of get straight in with any level of skill and do that. And it seems to work quite well. And then
you tend to have a theme. I mean, do you centre it around plants on the whole?
Because it's connected to the Garden Museum. There's a lot of stuff about plants, but that could be like growing plants for food, or we will focus on different exhibitions that are happening at the museum. So the last exhibition was the Derek Jarman exhibition. So we made kind of strange sculptures inspired by Derek Jarman sculptures, and we made models of our houses, an artist's houses, or like an imagined house we might want to live in, inspired by his cottage in Dungeness.
And for the Lambeth Wilds project, I guess your Clay for Dementia work actually fed into that commission as well, didn't it? Because you were working on the 2 side by side.
Yeah, one of the really lovely things about that project was that it kind of started as this core project, with the Lambeth Young Carers being the main group I worked with. but because it was within the museum, Janine, who's the head of learning there, was able to bring in all these different groups. So the Clay for Dementia group got involved, and then she also was taking this, you can see people rolling out slabs of clay. You can see my friend Beth there, who I think is listening today. And that she took that activity and did that as an outreach project in lots of the different communities that she was working with locally. So it really did kind of expand out, which was lovely.
Yeah, and actually a lot of the results are on display in the Garden Museum, aren't they? Or they were when I went. There's a whole wall of responses from different people to your workshops, which is amazing. I'll just show as well the slides of this is the commission, the Lambeth Wilds Commission at the Garden Museum, if anyone can manage to get to see it. It's a permanent piece of work which is there, I guess, forever, isn't it? I mean, it's fantastic that they commissioned that for this new space that they've created. So yeah, it's really rather wonderful. So yes, I suppose we should move on to talk about the project that we're planning, so this is a project that we've called Plants, Porcelain, People, that Katie and I would like to deliver next year. Well, this year, in fact. I keep thinking that it's still 2020, but fortunately it's not. So yeah, shall I say a few words about it, and then you can kind of expand upon how
introduction
it's working. So what we're planning to do is to work together on a kind of community engagement activity that will also lead into a commission for Katie, and will become an exhibition or a manifestation that's part of the Norfolk and Norwich Festival in May. Now, of course, with COVID, we don't exactly know what's going to be possible, but what we have proposed to do is a series of workshops on Zoom, which obviously Katie has done already with some of these previous groups. And this is going to be with Norwich International Youth Project, which is a group of young refugees in Norwich who meet regularly anyway. And this group have in the past wanted to work with clay. In fact, they have worked with an artist, Genevieve Rudd, and they requested to work with clay. So it seemed like a really good fit for us to see if it would be something they'd like to do to work with Katie. So that's the kind of beginning of the project. And then from that, we hope that Katie might develop some work, and actually St. Peter Hungat Church were interested in potentially showing the outcomes of this project. So yeah, do you think that explains it kind of? Yeah. And of course, as with any project like this, you don't exactly know what's going to happen until you do it, really, do you? You can kind of have plans and think you know what the outcomes are, but yeah, I wondered whether you feel that the work with this group of refugees is going to be kind of similar to things that you've done before. To what extent can you use your experience to work with them, I wonder?
Yeah, I think that's kind of part of why I love working with other people, is that sort of excitement of not really knowing what's going to come out of it. And kind of, I guess my plans to work with the Norwich International Youth Project involve taking inspiration from the St. Peter Hungat Church, which has got a connection to medieval healing plants. So I'm going to sort of take that as a starting point. It's also got quite a strong connection to archaeology and obviously the architecture of the church itself, and kind of create a series of prompts that the young people can respond to, and I can kind of use as a way of showing different techniques of working in clay. And then really I just want them to use their imaginations and to see what comes out of that.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, to keep it quite open-ended, really.
Yeah.
And also to say that the St Peter Hungert Church, it's a decommissioned church. It's actually used as a kind of museum, I suppose, really, and that they have this archaeological collection. And then it has an amazing garden, and that's where the medieval plants come in, because it's actually planted with medieval plants. And I think that will be really interesting to potentially visit that church. I mean, who knows whether that's going to be possible, but it should be possible in the spring. All sorts of things.
Even if I get a virtual tour, it will be a start.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's the plan for what we're going to do, and I guess then the question is how do you use that experience to feed into your own work, really? You know, that's something that's a bit unknown as well, isn't it? But
yeah, I think what part of what I'm interested in doing is kind of working with the church as a site and responding to that as a space that's very different to anywhere I've worked before. I mean, the Garden Museum is also a decommissioned church, but I had a very sort of particular space to work in. But yeah, I've been thinking about how I might kind of take up space in a way that doesn't involve making hundreds and hundreds of blades of grass, and whether that involves kind of using the natural light and shadows. And I'd really like to hopefully exhibit some of the work made by the young people alongside my work and think about how they might interact with each other. But I guess, yeah, it's again something that is a bit unknown and is also quite exciting to think about how that could or might develop.
Definitely. I think that, as you said before, that's one of the exciting things about it, is just not quite knowing what would happen, you know, what the responses will be, and what direction you'll go with it. But I think that would be really fun. And yeah, if anybody wants more information about that, or wants to get involved, or has ideas for us, then do let us know. Because there are other elements to it as well. I mean, the Norfolk and Norwich Festival have volunteers who were quite interested in potentially doing some sort of a clay workshop, and they in turn have a buddy scheme where they buddy up with people with learning difficulties, and so that could be interesting as well. So there are various different strands to this project that I think we're still figuring out, and because things are changing all the time with COVID as well, and also we haven't got it fully funded yet. So if we manage to get more funding, then we'll do more with it, I guess. Yeah. So I wondered also, you know, what other things you're involved in at the moment, and where you see your practice going in the future. You know, what things do you want to do that you can't do at the moment, Katie?
I guess a big part of that is working with other people and hoping that this project is able to go ahead in some capacity that allows me to work kind of in response to others. That's definitely how I want to develop my practice in the future. And then just thinking of working in new ways and with new materials. I've just recently started working with wire in some of my pieces, which has allowed me to make plants a lot taller and sort of add a bit of movement. And I think there's real potential to develop that. And yeah, like I said, with my ideas with the church, thinking about kind of creating installations in different ways, I'm quite excited about. And I've got my teaching as well. So I teach at Royal College of Art too. So I mean, it's a really, really tricky time for students now. So I'm hoping they can get back into the studios.
That's something that we haven't really talked about, but you know, I'm finding that with my students as well. It is really hard, isn't it? And you want to support them as best you can, but there's only so much we can all do, because we don't know what's going to be happening from one day to the next. And also we're all slightly struggling with the technology. I know I am anyway.
Yeah, I definitely spend a lot more of my life on Zoom than I'd like to.
Yeah,
I think
it's very hard for artists, I think, and particularly students who rely on workshops and the facilities that the university can provide. You know, that's difficult, isn't it? Because they can't get into those studios. But yeah, maybe we should sort of tie it up now and see if there are questions. Henry's disappeared, but he's probably there in the background somewhere, and he might have some questions. I haven't been looking at the YouTube, but I don't know if anybody else has. I mean, there's more that we could talk about if there aren't any questions at the moment. I was going to ask about your studio routine, actually, Katie, because I know that you were in London. When I visited your studio, you had this lovely studio in London, which was at the same place that Assemble are in, where is it? Kind of Bermondsey. Is it Bermondsey? I don't know.
Yeah, in Bermondsey, Sugar House Studios.
That's right. And but you've now moved to Brighton, so you do have a studio in Brighton as well as your home, don't you? A separate studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that set up? Is that shared or is it just you?
Yeah, I've taken on this amazing space in Robertson Yard in Brighton because I didn't have access to a studio throughout the whole of the first lockdown, which was quite tricky. I was just, the only clay I was allowed to do inside was clay for dementia, and that was my one morning a week of doing some clay. But my boyfriend Jeffrey's built all this amazing furniture in my new space, so it's really nicely set up, and I'm renting 2 desk spaces there. So I've got 2 other people working in clay. Bought my first ever refurbished secondhand kiln, so it's my first kiln I've owned myself, which is exciting.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, that's very exciting.
And I'm still clinging on to the studio at Sugar House, which I run as part of Collective Matter, which is a collective I'm part of, and we've got a resident who's working there kind of through the lockdowns at the moment.
Oh wow!
So we are still kind of keeping things going in that space, despite the 3 of us. None of us actually work from there.
Right.
The other 2.
Yeah, that was the place that I visited, and that also had been fitted out by Jeffrey, hadn't it? And it was a really lovely studio space. So the resident actually lives there, do they?
No, they'd freeze to death, I think, if they lived there. But no, she's got a studio space there for a 6-month residency, and then is travelling in.
Yeah, great. And Collective Matter is still doing things then, because I was looking on the website for Collective Matter, and you did quite a lot a couple of years ago, but I wondered if it's still going.
Yeah, we're looking to apply for some funding to kind of work out how we can be a bit more sustainable, because we've all got such busy practices teaching and making work. That we did a project last year, which we may or may not have posted on our website. I don't know how up to date it is. But at this space we've got called the Potting Shed at Contemporary Sculpture Fulmer. So we invited 3 different artist groups.
Yeah, no, I saw that
project there.
It is on there. It's lovely. So it's a kind of outdoor architectural space, isn't it? It's open to the elements.
Yeah.
It looks like a beautiful place there as well.
It is. It's amazing. And it's only 20 minutes outside of London.
Wow. Well, that's really nice. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It's been really great to talk to you. Henry, yes, that would be good.
Sorry, I was on mute then to everyone else. I know you guys couldn't hear me. I'm now audible on the live stream as well. I just posted in the chat, just while we continued talking, could you just go back through the slides, because when I shared the animation, I think when it turned back on, I think you skipped a few, and it would just be nice if people watching could see a few more of the work. I don't know if there was. I don't know if there was.
Just go slowly through these.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was, or maybe I don't know. Maybe there wasn't ones we missed.
I think there might have been
maybe just like ones like this. Those 2 we hadn't seen, I don't think. Or maybe
the other thing we haven't talked about, Katie, is your drawing. The way that you use drawings as preparatory work for the sculptures. because in particular in the show that that I did in my gallery, you showed a couple of drawings that were very closely related to those sculptures in the wooden and glass cases,
Yeah.
and they were ink, weren't they?
Yeah, drawing's quite an important part of how I develop my ideas and kind of plan things out. So I'll often start off by taking loads and loads of photographs, or sometimes drawing on site as well, which I find means I can kind of capture the energy of something that you might not get in a photograph. And then, yeah, will almost always become an ink drawing in my studio before it's developed into a piece.
Just a couple of things from the YouTube chat. Also, sorry, I don't know if the images were shown or I just wasn't on that screen at the moment. So I'm also doing the YouTube chat. Janie Bevington was saying, good to be with you all. Kate Vogler, hello, good to be with you all. And Susan Bonvin and Andrew and Rosie and Marion Catlin and Tina. So lots of lovely messages from people tuning in. Shafi, Peter Nansini said, good to be here, joining from Norwich. Shafi has said, such an amazing conversation. I enjoyed listening a lot. It's great to know how people came up to ideas and getting inspired by nature. Tessa's getting out a hiding clay while you talk.
Getting out some clay.
Yeah, a hiding clay. I got some of that from someone else for Christmas as well. The plant piece at the Plant Museum looks stunning, says Anne Follows from Wenniston. NIYP Youth Club, Ollie from Norwich International Youth Project here. Great to hear more about your work and really look forward to working with you. Beth Kelly said, delays, hello from Beth at the Slab Roller. A question from Shafi says, I wonder if we could join this project as well if lockdown is going to be relaxed. It really sounds very interesting. That would be amazing to participate in the project. Is that kind of thing possible, Katie? Anyway?
We are hoping that we might be able to do some public workshops as part of the Norfolk and Norwich festival. So we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And it might even be we can do something online if we're not able to meet physically.
That was the plan, wasn't it? And actually last May we were hoping to do some workshops as part of the Norfolk and Norwich Festival then, but of course the whole festival was cancelled last year, so we couldn't do that. So then we kind of developed the project onto what we had already expected would be the next stage. But yeah, we were hoping to include some public workshops during the festival, and the festival apparently is going ahead whatever, but they just don't know what form a lot of the activity will take. So it might be that those will be online workshops, but who knows, by May it might be possible to do things in person. That would be lovely. Definitely.
That's great to hear. We've already got one participant.
Yeah, that's right. You're on. You can't get out of it now, Shafiqa.
It sounds like you might have a few. Marin was saying that Thomas Brown springs to mind. In the garden, and artichokes and a mulberry tree, maybe, or another tree. Susan Boddenvin was saying, Katie, do you ever feel attracted to work with plant life underground, fungi?
Oh, yes, that's a really, really good question, because
your roots as well.
Yeah, I didn't mention that and the things that when Caroline asked me what my plans were for the future, but I'm getting very into mushrooms and mycelium, and reading what's his name? It's an amazing name. Merlin Sheldrake's book, Entangled Life, at the moment. So yes, I would be excited. There's some kind of amazing hyphy type structures, and I'm quite interested in moving my work into something a bit more abstract, and I think that could be quite a nice starting point.
Marianne Catlin was saying, didn't see the animation, got an assembly online slide at that point, Henry. Oh.
You can always put the link.
I posted the link in the chat, but maybe someone else could let me know. Maybe I could, because I was organising it, I couldn't see what I was sharing, so there was a slight confusion. I'll post it again in the chat now in case anyone didn't see it and would like to, and you can always play it while you're listening to this. Anne follows and says, I've been really interested in your conversation. I'm impressed and inspired by the range and outreach of your work, Katie. Suzanne Bonvin was saying, I mean, after Ted to use clay to render. I mean, I'm not sure. Marianne Catlin was saying, very good for us that graduated from art school many years ago. And Eva, lovely conversation from Eva. Tessa's making tulips with her clay. Andy Moore is saying, Katie, considering plants are a bundle of colour, is this something you seem to have avoided? Any particular reason?
I did experiment with using colour when I first started making this work, and it was really hard to not make it look tacky. But also I kind of wanted to create this sense that people could lay their own sort of stories and memories onto the pieces, and white was appropriate for doing that. But I have been sneaking a little bit of colour very subtly into my work. So the last body of work I made, which was the stuff in response to the garden, I was working with some slightly more earthy tones, or like this really lovely kind of rich brown that I was getting from painting the leaves with oxides, because I was looking at things that were dead as well as things that were living. But yeah, I think a little bit more colour will start to sneak in, but I don't know if you'll ever get the kind of vividness of the real world. You have to go outside to get that.
But it makes the pieces quite ghostly in a way, doesn't it? And also rather wintry. So when you go out in the garden at this time of year, you get a lot of kind of grasses and things that have been left over from last summer, and they're frosty and dried out, you know, and you get that sense of wintry plants, but actually they still have the flowers on. So yeah, there's a kind of slight confusion there, and I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, I like it when I go outside and I see a bit of my work living outside. That's exciting.
Indeed, yeah.
Susan was sorry, I keep saying Suzanne. Susan was thinking of Entangled Life, she said.
Yeah, I think that's the book that I mentioned that I was reading.
Yeah. So
it must be we're on the same kind of wavelength on that one.
Same kind of route.
Yeah.
Yes. Roots quite.
Does anyone else have any questions who's watching in? We've had over 40 households tuned in, which is really nice for the first Assembly Online of 2021. And thank you all for talking in the chat. I'll just leave it for a second because there is a 30-second delay between what we're doing and what is shown on YouTube, which can be quite confusing. Here's the dead air, what do you call it? Well, I'll start to round up, and then if anyone does post any other questions in the chat, then we can just do that at the end, if that's okay. So I'll just say really thank you to Katie Spragg and Caroline Fisher for doing the event, for doing the event today. It was a really great way to start the programme, which will be continuing until March 2021, where we'll be having a short break, or maybe a longer break, I'm not sure, but it's likely that we might come back later in the year. Upcoming on Assembly Online, we have January the 21st, we have Sarah Lowndes, who'll be returning. February the 4th is Oven By, which is hosted and selected by Jonathan P. Watts. And then on February the 18th, there's an international poetry reading, number 6, hosted and selected by Kai Draper. If you're interested in finding out more details of those events in the week before they happen, then I've just posted a link in the YouTube chat, which will go to the mailing list. We've also just announced the summer open exhibition for the Assembly House Trust, which will be at the Assembly House in June, which is possibly something to work towards in this lockdown that we're currently sitting in. Hopefully, the exhibition will happen. Last year we had to cancel it, and this year it will go ahead unless we're in complete lockdown or the Assembly House isn't open. So it's likely that we might have to do social distance visiting, etc. But the show will still go ahead, and it'd be really great to see people putting their work in for that. Apologies for anyone who got the Assembly Online email and tried to click the link. The link didn't go anywhere, but the image did. And I've posted the link in the chat now. That'll go to the website. There's all the details on there, along with application form and details. Do pass it on to anyone who you think might like to work towards something over lockdown. Just a few things that have come up through the chat since I was talking. Suzanne continuing to keep saying Suzanne. Susan say how it would suit the expression in clay in fungi. Eva Hall saying, Tricia says, are they fired with wire in?
No, so they're made as components and then very painstakingly glued together after they've been in the kiln.
That's the secret.
Painstaking part.
Yeah. Thank you for a nice evening with you all. Thank you. I joined eventually. I'm glad, Kay, that you managed. Stacey saying thank you. This has been so interesting and inspiring. Look forward to hearing more about the International Youth Project. Thank you for a really enjoyable and interesting talk. Thank you, Katie, Caroline, Henry. Great talk. And thank you, Assembly Online and Henry. Very informative and interesting event. If people want to hear more about both of your work, where is the best place for them to do it? Should I post links to your websites in the chat?
Yeah, my website is very much not up to date. Probably Instagram is the best place to find me. And I'll post my Instagram in the chat as well.
Yeah. And Caroline, should I put yours in?
For me, my website is probably pretty much up to date and has the current exhibition and online shop. And I will be posting more details about the project I'm doing with Katie just as soon as we know exactly what's happening. But yes, on my Instagram as well. And I am still occasionally doing those Instagram lives. So do join me for those because they're good fun.
I've just posted Caroline's Instagram in there as well. But thank you both for tonight. That was really good. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and hopefully see you in 2 weeks for Sarah Lowndes' event, which we'll be announcing soon. Thanks again, stay safe, look after each other, good night.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.